It is time for another edition of the Fight HQ podcast. Of course, I'm Jason Foy, as always, joined by the fighter Pete Rogers Jr. We're here to break down UFC Vegas 104, which goes down tomorrow inside the UFC Apex. Lock time currently set 4 p.m. Eastern time. We'll see if that does change, Pete, because as we're sitting here getting ready to do the show, you miss weight, you miss weight, you miss weight. Right now, the scale has not been very friendly to multiple fighters here today.
Yeah, some cards, unfortunately, are like that, right? And I always took pride when I was a part of a card that all the fighters made weight. It was a good feeling. It felt like you were actually professional. Things happen, of course. But, I mean, the first thing you have to do is make weight in order to participate and in order to compete. So, it kind of changes the landscape of the slate a little bit because of one drastic weight miss, some narrow weight misses, and sometimes when it's narrow weight misses, it could be even worse because they were struggling to squeeze out those last couple pounds versus kind of, pulling the plug on some of these weight cuts a little earlier before you had to truly kill yourself to make weight. So really, we don't know, but, based on off of like history and experience in this field, we know sometimes narrow misses are a little bit worse than the big misses.
As we sit here on Friday, a little past 1:30 Eastern time, we do have 13 fights. We've had 3 fighters miss weight. 2 of the 3 fighters are not going to attempt to weigh in. Dier, who missed weight by 4.5 pounds for his light heavyweight matchup. Also, 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐬𝐳 missing weight by 1.25 pounds. Those fights are scheduled to go forward. I think the 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐬 one, I would not really have a lot of concern about that. Now, when you're talking about someone who misses weight by 4.5 pounds, then you kind of have maybe a little bit of question there. And the other fighter only missed weight by 0.5 pound. So that's a really developing story there. And, we have fighters moving up in weight. We have fighters moving down in weight. Ryan Spann moving up to heavyweight. Oh, man, it's as I was putting together my spreadsheets, I got into the office here this afternoon, Pete. I'm looking at the salaries, and we'll get right into game theory, talking about UFC Vegas 104. And I'm looking at this Cortez Acosta Ryan Spann fight, and I'm just like, you're probably not going to feel great either way, but in large field GPPs, it's probably a fight you have to prioritize.
Yeah, I've kind of gone back and forth on this fight, right? Like Ryan Spann's one of the best round one fighters out there. He's kind of like a Terrence McKinney, where he has all the tools in the world. Very dangerous striker, very dangerous submission threat as well. Cardio collapse clearly after round one, and is a liability, especially in the fight IQ department. The other side, Waldo Cortez Acosta, not really a guy that I've been all that high on, to be honest. Just kind of a guy within the division. Very solid hands, a generalist. He is a true heavyweight, and he definitely has the better gas tank of the two. He has the ability to go long, where Ryan Spann is a round one type of fighter. So this could be a little interesting of a fight, right? Like, early, I think that it favors Spann. But also we've seen Spann get dealt with in round one as well when it doesn't go his way. But obviously, as the fight goes on, you would like to think that it favors Waldo Cortez Acosta, the guy who's won more decisions and the guy who is, pretty seasoned for this weight class. I was actually surprised to see Ryan Spann weigh in as heavy as it did. What did I tell you? He's 249 or 245 or something like that. I mean, he didn't look muscular. He's usually a really, really chiseled guy for the 205-pound division. But to see how much weight maybe he's been cutting this entire time, going from fat to in shape. Now he's just kind of is what he is. He's still a really big guy. He's a mammoth of a human being. I would like to have seen like an actual true, what's an in shape heavyweight look like nowadays? I mean, we really don't know, but I would have liked to seen some muscle development, or actually look like he's in good shape. He just looks a little like he let himself go. But regardless, I would agree with you saying that the salary and the landscape of the slate probably makes this fight a little bit more optimal than I want to get to, but it's probably necessary for GPPs.
Yeah, one of the things I was thinking about, I was like, man, if I want to live dangerous, maybe I'm going to play the over 1.5 rounds. Maybe just hope that.
Oh my
God. I'm sure I haven't even looked at what the number is, but I'm sure it's a good number. I mean, one thing about this fight card, we have 6 fighters on this card that are at least a 4-1 betting favor. So that can, make of how you construct your lineup. Main event, I really believe, is truly going to be tough to get away from. You got Vettori. This is a rematch, by the way. Vettori coming off that shoulder injury. It was about 2 months ago, where he basically goes on social media and was like, hey, man, I'm ready to get back in there. So, the 5-round nature of this one, of course, the first matchup was only a 3-round matchup there. Then you look at some fights that you just go, God damn, I don't trust either one of these guys. Alex Hernandez and Kurt Hollobaugh. I don't know how you trust either guy right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you trust, Alexander Hernandez given what he's done within the UFC. But Hollobaugh, outside of just having good hands, I'm not a believer in his MMA skill set. I'm just not. His wrestling's not good. His jiu-jitsu kind of came through, but he likes to play, play jiu-jitsu off of his back a little bit too much for my liking, which can lead to getting controlled if you do not find the finish. That was clearly evident in the Trey Ogden performance. I'm excited to see where you are on some of these fights. We got some what could go wrong type of fighters with massive, massive price tags associated with them. I mean, we got 𝐼𝐬𝐬𝐳 as a heavy, heavy favorite. Pretty green as far as like overall MMA competition, but not nearly as green as her opponent. And I love 𝐼𝐬𝐬𝐳 this week, but still, it's kind of crazy to see such a heavy, heavy favorite price tag associated with her. We got Andre Lima, who's one foul away from getting disqualified every single fight. We got Ryan Spann testing out the heavyweight division. We got Su Young Yu at like a -700 price tag going up against a guy in AJ Cunningham who isn't the best guy, but he's dabbled in the featherweight and lightweight divisions in the past. And then we also have, Alexander Hernandez as a sizable favorite. Kevin Vallejos, everybody's favorite boxer coming into the UFC who had such a barn burner with Gene Silva. But that Dana White's Contender Series hype is a real thing, man. And they come in here with inflated numbers. And this is not an easy UFC debut. And then the rematch. And, of course, they have to throw the monkey wrench into the rematch where Marvin Vettori is coming off of a shoulder injury, as you mentioned. So it's like, goodness gracious, can't we just get some normal stuff? But regardless, I'm happy to see that we have some fights to talk about. Happy that we're able to do this show. And I'm really excited to see if you agree with me, disagree with me, because I got some flag plants this week that I'm really excited to see how it works out.
You have 6 fighters who are 9,000 range on DK. I'm interested to hear from our listeners. Over under 1.5 of those fighters lose.
Ooh, I like it, Jason. Jason's living dangerously. I like it. Let me look at that because now I gotta look.
You got Blackshear, Vallejos, Musasa, Lima, and Judice.
Me personally, I'm saying under, and I could be dead wrong, but I could see tons of paths to victory for every opponent. So, yeah, this could be a leave salary on the table, or don't be afraid to play some underdogs.
Yeah, there's definitely some underdogs that I'll be targeting this week. Of course, we will have our DraftKings contest. I'll get that up here later on today. So, of course, we got our Discord channel, totally free to join. Be sure to check that out. Great conversations going on there. Of course, also, we do have the offer from 𝗏𝐿 get 15% off any MMA package that they do offer. All you got to do is use the promo code 𝐕HQ to get that discount, 15% off your first month with 𝗏𝐿 with any of their MMA packages, promo code 𝐕HQ. Let's get right into it. The main event is a rematch between Marvin Vettori and Roman Dolidze. Vettori is the betting favorite here at -160 plus 135 for Dolidze. Dolidze 8,000 on DK, $16 on FanDuel for Vettori, 8,200 on DK, and $17 on FanDuel. Pete.
Yeah, I mean, the first fight was an interesting one. Definitely closer than I imagined. In my mind, I have Marvin Vettori a lot further ahead than I have Roman Dolidze. Personally, I've never been a big Roman guy. I probably bet against him more times than I should have. But I don't know. I mean, Roman Dolidze, he's a very good jiu-jitsu practitioner, has power in his hands. He's very sloppy, and you guys know that I don't really get behind sloppy fighters. And his cardio is definitely a liability. But if you can't expose it, then what am I even talking about? So in the first fight, I think it was closer than what some judges scored. Marvin Vettori definitely didn't perform as well as I would have loved. But I think that it's pretty clear the more active fighter is Marvin Vettori. So, we have Marvin Vettori attempting a little bit more than 3-4 strikes per minute, and then Roman 𝗏𝐿𝐽𝐽, who 𝗏𝐿𝐽𝐽 is going to be pretty dangerous early. I think a path for Marvin Vettori to get awarded some rounds is to initiate some wrestling or attempt some takedowns just to kind of mix it up, because I think Roman 𝗏𝐿𝐽𝐽 is willing and accepting to go to his back. So I don't think that he will necessarily fight tooth and nail to defend every takedown. I mean, if we get Vettori to attempt like 6 takedowns in this fight, he could probably score 2 or 3 of them, which could really put a stamp on certain rounds. And I think that's an important part of Marvin Vettori's game that he's shown in the past. Is he's not the greatest striker in the world. He's not the greatest wrestler in the world, but he can blend the styles pretty well, and he's a strong guy. He could take a shot too. So the durability and the strength of schedule makes me lean towards Marvin Vettori in this matchup. Not to mention that Marvin Vettori has made a switch to American Top Team. And you guys know my love for American Top Team, of how talented and stacked that room is. I mean, before we had Austin Vanderford break into the UFC, I was watching Vettori and Vanderford spar. You know, I mean, that room is just completely loaded with all weight classes. And I'm happy to see Marvin Vettori going there, part of a camp that can actually increase his level of wrestling, increase his preparation, and get him back in here. Obviously, the one thing I do not like is the shoulder injury, which is a clear question. But it's not like he's rushing back too quickly. I mean, if he's able to train and compete, I don't see why. If he's able to train in that room, I don't see why he's unable to compete. And he's looked pretty damn good. He looks in great physical conditioning. So for me, just the activity, the strength of schedule, and obviously the cardio advantage as this fight gets extended, it's a Marvin Vettori play for me. But I think either way, they're both pretty good values. I have them as 2 of the best values on the entire slate. And I currently have Marvin Vettori as the best value on the slate, just personally, because of what I think he can do if he ups his activity, if he increases his takedown attempts, if he just makes this an MMA fight. He can avoid some dangerous submission attempts from Roman 𝗏𝐿𝐽𝐽. He's the better scrambler of the 2. He's the better wrestler. And I favor Marvin Vettori to get his hand raised. And I'm hoping it's a little bit more of a true Marvin Vettori performance where there's no questions. And over 5 rounds, I think it benefits him. But obviously, the injury concerns are real. So give me Marvin Vettori here at 8,200. I like him quite a bit. And I think that you have to have one of these guys a part of your lineups, just given the salary of the fight and its 5 rounds.
One of my concerns about Marvin Vettori heading into this matchup is more about the 5-round nature of this matchup. Of if this fight does hit the 4th and 5th round, is that cardio potentially there? Because you do have a little bit of a concern there. Missed this question here from Sam. He goes, "Is it possible just to avoid the whole main fight?" I think because of the salary and particularly understanding the path to victory for Marvin Vettori, I find it very hard to avoid this fight.
Yeah, it's very hard for me to avoid the fight. But I'm a big Marvin Vettori guy. I think that he can really go out there and show that he's a true top 10, potential top 5 fighter within the division. And I just don't see Roman as that guy. I mean, I could be dead wrong, but I just don't see that as, I don't believe in 𝗏𝐿𝐽𝐽's defense at all. I mean, his combined defensive rating is 83%. His takedown defense is 33%. His striking defense is 50%. I mean, I have Vettori scoring 4 takedowns here and outlanding Roman 𝗏𝐿𝐽𝐽 a sizable margin over 5 rounds. And then we mix into the cardio. I think that Roman's activity, he did go 5 rounds with Nasruddin Imavov. Whether he was competitive in that or not, it's still quite impressive that he went 5 rounds. But I'm hoping he's just a stationary target and Marvin Vettori just styles on him. So give me Vettori 8,200. If I didn't hear anything about the injury concerns, I would think Marvin Vettori would be like -200 here.
Yeah, I mean, look, and one of the questions is over that shoulder injury. I mean, look, the fact of, I think if you would believe he is. You would not imagine of where he's currently at that he would take the risk if he didn't feel 100% confident in his shoulder.
Well, I mean, he's in great shape. He's training. He's sparring. I'm watching videos of him sparring. If you can spar with the room at American Top Team, you should be able to compete. I mean, only person that knows is if he's coming back too soon is him. But, I mean, everything else, all the stats, everything, I'm favoring Marvin Vettori to get this one done.
I was listening to John Anik's podcast this week, and he made a comment about American Top Team. So Francis Marshall, of course, fought last week. Really, probably he should have got that decision win. Got screwed on that one. He was asked about decision to leave New Jersey and to go train at American Top Team, and Anik said his line was, "Sometimes you got to trade in the Android for the iPhone."
That's right. That's right. iPhone life, baby.
I was like, damn.
No, I mean, it's true, though, right? Like, you have to once you get to a certain level, unless you're very blessed and you happen to be a part of a high-level training room. It doesn't happen all that often. So I thought that we got robbed, and Francis Marshall clearly should have won.
Yeah.
Last week, Jason, I did single entry, and I still think I made like, I don't know, 100, 150, $200 with 2 losing fighters in my lineup because of how I had my exposure. And like I had Francis Marshall, who should have had it. Who let me down? Petrosian's ass. Petrosian let me down, that little bastard. Okay, he let me down, so it screwed up everything. But it just goes to show you that if you really target the correct underdogs, and especially like underdogs that get finishes, of course. But if an underdog is in a competitive decision, the value, man, you got to play some value and just kind of taking everything out. The hype of the Ultimate Fighter from Iron Santos, we talked about it, and that's why I looked at the price point and I go, I can't get away from this. Francis Marshall needs to be in my lineup. Yeah. So I did it. It worked out, and the algorithm's been popping out some great stuff in combination with my own insight and, of course, your insight. But I've been pretty pleased. I'm floating. I think last week I was like 85, 88% with everything. So I'll take that all day long, especially I wish I was doing a 150 max. But not having Bruno really screwed me and being on the opposite end with Armin Petrosian. Yeah,
I mean, you talk about judging scorecards. I'm still baffled that we had a judge give the 5th round to 𝐒𝐤𝐳 last week. I'm still baffled by that. Goddamn, what a boring fight that was.
It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible.
I said on my podcast earlier this week, I said, you got to give your flowers to 𝐒𝐤𝐳 for going out there, implementing game plan, and doing something we really haven't seen in the UFC to Alex. Backing him down and Alex just not throwing. But I said, give him his flowers for becoming the champion. But that was not entertaining at all. And the disgust Dana White had on his face when Bruce Buffer told him the scorecards, to me, he told you everything. It told you everything you need to know. And of course, 𝐒𝐤𝐳 already going on Twitter to, throw jabs at John Jones. I don't think it's him tweeting it. I think it's his manager tweeting it, but that's just me.
Probably. That fight sucked. And I was really disappointed in both sides. And let me tell you, I was more disappointed in Pereira, to be honest. Just because he didn't give himself a chance to win, in my opinion. I think 4-1 is probably the correct scorecard. 3-2 definitely. Anything other than that for 𝐒𝐤𝐳 is I didn't see how Pereira won 3 rounds. There's no way. He didn't do enough. And I know 𝐒𝐤𝐳 held him against the cage and controlled and dictated and whatnot, but like you can't win a round by a couple punches versus total control against the cage and attempts and all. You know what I mean? So like 𝐒𝐤𝐳 clearly won. I was just disappointed with both sides. And I think the fear of the takedown is what really led to Pereira being gun shy. I mean, it changed the entire game.
Yeah, look, if I would have sat here a week ago and told you that Alex is going to stop 10 out of 10 takedown attempts, you've been like, I am locking in Alex in my lineups.
Yeah, I mean, what did I tell you? Freaking 𝐒𝐤𝐳's wrestling is so overrated. But I mean, like, Pereira did a very good job getting underhooks. There were no single leg attempts. And I thought that's what really could have been the difference maker, because Pereira does this butt drag defense for the single leg where it would not work against a high level wrestler at all. But also, Ankalaev's content with, dude, you're against the cage. You're losing. You're defending. You know what I mean? So, but whatever. That fight sucked. It was terrible for the UFC. It was terrible for the product. It was terrible for everything. And now we got to deal with, so they need to put. I would love to see Yuri go in there against Ankalaev, because he's volatile, but so dangerous that I don't think you can get away with that game plan against Yuri Prochazka.
My issue watching that fight, and this is purely as a combat sports fan, at the end of the day, like when I'm watching a fight, I want to see fighters that are going for it. When they hurt their opponent, they go for it. And every time I watch Ankalaev, I just feel like he's a point fighter.
He is. And what's the worst part is if Pereira gets a quick rematch, immediate rematch, and he loses because he doesn't have time to truly develop or develop a game plan or go out there and change much from the first fight. Now he's out of a title fight for a very, very long time. And now the potential super fight with him and John Jones, I mean, it could still happen. One phone call, I'm sure they could still make that happen. But that's kind of shattered. You know what I mean? So it just screwed everything. What the UFC wanted to happen and what happened are two different things.
Biggest winners, Yuri Prochazka and Tom Aspinall.
I agree. I totally agree.
Because
right.
You can't sell another fight between Yuri and Alex. You just can't. And now with Alex loss, if you're Jones and you do want to continue fighting, I think that's a legitimate question. It's got to be Tom Aspinall. I mean, Dana last week was doing the media rounds and he's saying it's going to happen this time at some point this year. I mean, I feel bad for Tom Aspinall at the end of the day. I mean, the guy's just sitting there waiting and, probably just sitting there waiting for a date in terms of that one. Now, our co-main event on Saturday is 𝐃𝐸 𝐬𝐽 against 𝐿ESKI dos Santos. Dos Santos, a minus 200 betting favorite, plus 170 for 𝐬𝐽, who, by the way, did miss weight by weighed in at 172.25 pounds, so he missed weight. The fight will go ahead. He's not trying to cut any additional weight. 𝐬𝐽 on DK is $7,800 on FanDuel. He's $13. Dos Santos is $8,400 on DK and $18 on FanDuel. Pete.
Yeah, I really love this co-main event, to be honest. I mean, I'm a big fan of 𝐿ESKI dos Santos. I'm an even bigger fan of 𝐃𝐸 𝐬𝐽. 𝐃𝐸 𝐬𝐽 works with one of my striking coaches, who I mention all the time on this show, in Crew Dom. I've always loved 𝐃𝐸 𝐬𝐽's striking. He's so crisp. He's so technical. This fight needs to remain on the feet for 𝐃𝐸 to win it. The good thing is that 𝐿ESKI dos Santos is not a guy who truly attempts a ton of takedowns. If 𝐿ESKI dos Santos went out there and attempted more takedowns, then I think that this could be an interesting fight. Yes, 𝐃𝐸 𝐬𝐽 is technically a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but super vulnerable on the mat. Not the same fighter when it hits the mat at all. The good thing is that 𝐿ESKI dos Santos' takedown defense is at like 20%. So, I mean, he could land one takedown and get into a dominant position and finish the fight. Super, super live. And I don't mind the markets of 𝐿ESKI dos Santos to win via submission. I personally think that's like his best path to victory here. I don't like the chances of him winning decision. Totally could happen, but I don't like it as much as the submission props. I don't think he's knocking out 𝐃𝐸 𝐬𝐽. I mean, he needs to attempt like 3 to 5 takedowns in order to secure one with a good position, in my opinion. I mean, we have a youth advantage of 2 years for 𝐃𝐸 𝐬𝐽, even though they're both aged. And then combining height and reach advantage, we got 11 inches for 𝐃𝐸 𝐬𝐽. So 𝐃𝐸 is clearly a very longer and an outside type of striker in this matchup. And I think that 𝐿ESKI dos Santos will struggle in that department of dealing with the longer, taller, technically better striker, in my opinion. We got capoeira against Muay Thai, and 𝐃𝐸 𝐬𝐽's Muay Thai is exceptional. I think that he hits really hard, but the way that he dominates his opposition in the clinch is very, very evident. I mean, his elbows, his knees to the body are true Muay Thai fashion. That is Crew Dom working with him all these years as well. So Yeah, I like Chidi and Njokuani here as a slight underdog at 7,800. I think that the height and reach combination of total of 11 inches is enough for me to get behind Chidi and Njokuani. I think that, he doesn't even necessarily have to be the more active striker out there. He can just be the more efficient striker. And I also think that, he's had a pretty good strength of schedule. I mean, 𝐿'Cy'S dos Santos has fought some the better names, but all things considered, I like Chidi and Njokuani to come through here. I really do. I mean, I think it's going to be a competitive fight. Chidi could get 𝐿'Cy'S dos Santos out of there, but I think ultimately we're going to say, wow, the height and reach and the kicks of Chidi and Njokuani and the clinch is what really won him that fight. I have it as a competitive line fight if it goes 15 minutes. But I'm going to be backing the underdog 7,800 Chidi and Njokuani. The only real worry is the weight miss, but we've known about Chidi and Njokuani's hatred of making 170 pounds. I mean, at 185, he's not as big, he's not as strong or as physical as those guys. Or maybe it's that they're as physical and as strong as him. At 170 pounds, he is a freak. And, a narrow weight miss is always a worry. But I just think it's because Chidi's really, really, really squeezing out these last couple pounds. But he looked in phenomenal shape. And I'm gonna be picking Chidi and Njokuani to get this one done, Jason.
There's always fighters who I feel are always in between two different weight classes. We talked about it a couple weeks ago at UFC Seattle. Austin Vanderford is much better at 170 than he is 185. And that to me is, when we look at Chidi and Njokuani, he's another one that I put in that. Question, does 𝐿'Cy'S lace up the wrestling shoes? That would be, but that's not his game.
I mean, it's not his game. I mean, like, if I'm looking at the stats, and I sent it to Jason. Jason gets to see what I'm looking at now too of the algorithm. But like, his takedown accuracy is at 20%. I would love to see that number closer to 50%, obviously, and I would love to see his takedown attempts more than just 3 per fight. I would love to see that north of like 6, because in his previous matchup against Randy Brown, that was a path to victory as well, and he didn't necessarily go to it as often as I would have liked. And a guy is who he is. A fighter is who he is. And I think that 𝐿'Cy'S dos Santos has so much faith in his striking that he's going to strike unless he gets hurt. And then that's where we're going to see desperation takedown attempts. And I actually think that Chidi and Njokuani's takedown defense has been solid. I mean, it's 74% in the UFC. He's a big guy for the welterweight division. So I worry about him getting pounded out or submitted more than getting ragdolled. So give me Chidi and Njokuani here to pull off the upset.
Next up, we got Alexander Hernandez taking on Hollobaugh. Hollobaugh a plus 175, betting underdog minus 210 for Hernandez, who's 𝐴600 on DK, $17 on FanDuel. Hollobaugh 7,600 on DK and $14 on FanDuel, Pete.
Yeah, so I mean, very untrustworthy fight here. You can't really trust either guy, but I'm going to pick the younger guy, 6 years younger in Alexander Hernandez. Slight strength of schedule advantage as well. And I also love his defense a little bit more than Hollobaugh. I mean, Hollobaugh's takedown defense sits at 42%. His striking defense sits at 47%. I think he's vulnerable in both spots. I mean, he's a brawler. He'll come forward flat-footed, a guy that really just likes to back you up and hit you with long boxing combinations. But I think he's susceptible, man. I think he's hittable on the feet, and I also think that his takedown defense is quite poor. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. You already know about my opinion towards Jiu-Jitsu practitioners when it comes to the wrestling. So I think his wrestling is lacking, and I think that Alexander Hernandez is definitely the better wrestler of the two. Hernandez is a little volatile himself, but I'm going to be backing Alexander Hernandez here. I think that the strikes attempted will be very, very close. But the efficient strikes will be going towards Hernandez because of the footwork, but also because of the striking defense. And then not to mention that, I actually think that Alexander Hernandez could lace up those wrestling shoes and put Hollobaugh on his back, and that could result in a TKO or a potential submission finish. I think offensively, Hollobaugh is very, very dangerous, both striking and submission-wise. But I think defensively, he's a little flawed, and always been a guy that I've viewed as a somewhat of a flawed fighter. So I think that Alexander Hernandez here could land 2 takedowns, could, match Hollobaugh on the feet, could hurt him potentially, could, bust him up, and possibly work towards a submission or a TKO finish. So I think that Hollobaugh is an interesting dog because of his aggression and because of Hernandez's liability and how we've seen him quit time and time again. And also that cardio collapse is a true and real thing. But Hollobaugh's cardio ain't that great either. So I think that, neither one of them have elite cardio. I think that Hernandez, needs to have a gut check performance, and this could be it because Hollobaugh definitely has the bigger dog in him when it comes to who's going to bite down on the mouthpiece and really, really go for it. But I think efficiently, man, I have to go with Alexander Hernandez to pull off a victory here and price at 8,600. I think he's at such an interesting price that a lot of people don't want to get behind it. And I'm willing to take my shot and put him in more lineups than probably the masses. I'm not looking at ownership at the moment, but I don't foresee him being super, super popular. And I kind of see Hollobaugh being a decently popular underdog because of the volatility of Hernandez. But give me Hernandez to pull off the victory here.
It's really hard to have a lot of faith in Alexander Hernandez. I mean, we've seen how the UFC run has gone for him. One of the concerns I say I would have for him in this matchup, Pete, I don't know if you agree with me, him getting caught in a guillotine.
Yeah, I mean, I've always viewed Hernandez, his jiu-jitsu, to be so much better than what I've really seen. I mean, I remember watching training footage of this guy, and his wrestling and his jiu-jitsu, very, very good. I mean, Hollobaugh's got a pretty good armbar, pretty good triangle as well. I just don't want him hanging out in the guard, right?
Yeah,
Because,
yeah.
if you're tired, you're more apt to make mistakes. I need Hernandez passing and being aggressive and make Hollobaugh defend. It's definitely live, and I wouldn't blame anybody for going out there and betting on a Hollobaugh finish. But for me, I'm going to be going with Hernandez.
Next up, we got Damon Blackshear taking on Cody Gibson. Gibson a plus 350 betting underdog. Blackshear is minus 500. He's 9,200 DK, $21 on FanDuel. Cody Gibson 7,000 on DK and $10 on FanDuel, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, both of these guys, I think, are fantastic wrestlers and fantastic athletes. Damon Blackshear and Cody Gibson, pretty big for the division. Just looking at the stare down right now, and I'm at the weigh-ins. Blackshear looks to be in phenomenal shape. He looks to be in absolute phenomenal shape. Cody Gibson's always looking in pretty good shape himself, but Blackshear is cut up. This one's interesting, Jason. I'm not necessarily in love with this from a DFS perspective. On the feet, I think that it's a pretty close fight when it comes to activity. Gibson actually has some better defensive statistics than what Blackshear has on the feet. So I'm kind of interested by that. We have Blackshear's striking defense sitting at 49%. We got Cody Gibson's striking defense sitting at 57%. Blackshear's a little bit more active, but it's really even when it comes to efficiency. We have Blackshear's takedown accuracy sitting at 37%. Cody Gibson sitting at 40%. Both of these guys will attempt probably 6 takedowns in this bout. And their opponent's takedown defense is identical at 68%. So, man, it's a really, really interesting fight, and I could see it just turning into one scramble into an advantageous submission position, and then the fight's over because these guys are pretty competitive. The youth advantage goes to Damon Blackshear, 7 years younger. The combination of height plus reach advantage is 1 inch for Damon Blackshear. It's a really competitive fight. The strength of schedule for Damon Blackshear is better than Cody Gibson, despite Gibson going through the Ultimate Fighter, but also having a previous career with the UFC as well. So Damon Blackshear's fought tougher competition in 2025. And I really, really like Blackshear just in general. The odds of -400, I was really, really surprised by this. I was really surprised by this. I mean, according to my metrics, I have Cody Gibson as he's priced at 7,000 as a pretty good value play this week as a guy who could win a decision. Kind of like a Francis Marshall, but I'm not really all that sold on Cody Gibson um, outperforming Blackshear here. But I think it could be a serviceable punt. When I'm looking at these punt plays, I see Cody Gibson down there at 7,000. Definitely can break through. One of the best value plays on the slate if it goes 15 minutes. But if you look, you notice that Cody Gibson does have a tendency to get caught in some submissions. And let me tell you, I think the better jiu-jitsu practitioner is Blackshear. So at 9,200, Jason, not really in love with this from a DFS perspective because I actually think that their strengths can negate each other. And this could be a back and forth type of fight. I don't necessarily see it being one-way traffic. I would be very, very shocked and surprised if Blackshear ragdolled Gibson or Gibson ragdolled Blackshear. But the pick will be Blackshear. I like the fact that he's at 𝐾𝐬𝐬𝐵 FC. I like the fact that he's 7 years younger, 1 inch advantage in height plus reach. And I just think he'll be a little bit more active, and I think he's a better scrambler of the two. So the better submission artist, in my opinion, is Blackshear, and I think that could lead to a finish. So I'll pick Blackshear, but according to my metrics, man, at 7,000, you could do worse to get Cody Gibson in your lineup if it goes 15 minutes.
Cody Gibson to me just seems like one of those guys that, as we've talked about this over the past couple of weeks, is we're not that far away from it being cut season. And it really makes me wonder, is this potentially a matchup where, his days in the UFC could be numbered if he can't get a win or it's not a competitive matchup. I would probably say I'd be probably more interested in Blackshear on the betting markets, looking at some of the props, maybe look some round props, something along those lines. Next up, we got a matchup that was supposed to be a light heavyweight. It's no longer a light heavyweight matchup because Dier missed weight by 4.5 pounds, weighing in at 210.5 for his matchup against Roberio. Roberio plus 300 betting Underdog minus 400 for Dier. Walking in this one, he's 8,900 DK, $18 on FanDuel. Bretson Roberio 7,300 on DK and $12 on FanDuel. Pete.
Yeah, weird fight. Weird fight here. I mean, Roberio is a guy that was priced as a massive underdog on Dana White's Contender Series and ended up knocking out his opponent, and it was quite surprising. And now you fast forward and, Roberio is in the UFC, and he's had a lot more success than I kind of expected. Granted, it hasn't been anything spectacular, but if you look at his record, this guy's been knocked out 3 times in the first round, and then he's been submitted once in the first round and once in the second round. Just looks like a very volatile fighter. So when he came in and he beat Bruno Lopez on the Contender Series, it's like, okay, well, he definitely packs a punch. They pinned him up against Mingyang Zhang, who finished him brutally in round 1. Magomed Gaziesulov won a majority decision. Kyle Machado, one of the worst fighters, a part of the 205 heavyweight division. Bouncing between those two divisions, he just is not really all that good. He won a split decision over him. But, Roberio's very dangerous, but I don't trust him. And, granted, it's only one fight, but Dier has looked pretty dangerous himself. And I don't think he's as flawed defensively as Roberio. I mean, if we're looking at the stats, Roberio's striking defense sits at 54%. Granted, the one fight for Dier, his striking defense sits at 66%. This fight should remain on the feet. I think that Roberio would be wise to attempt some takedowns, maybe attempt 2 to 3 takedowns. I think that he could get 1, maybe 2. We have seen Dier get taken down on the regional scene. But all in all, Jason, I just don't know what I'm expecting from Dier. You know what I mean? I think that Dier is dangerous. He has a pretty good high kick for a guy his size. He hits pretty damn hard. Offensively, he's very good. Defensively, he reminds me a little bit of Hollobaugh, where he's, you know, likely to get taken down, likely to get hit. Durability hasn't, been a problem yet. It could be as he fights somebody more elite that can capitalize. But this is a very low volume fight, in my opinion. Like, Dier is a guy that goes out there and doesn't really push a crazy pace. I think he may throw like 6.7 strikes per minute. I mean, that isn't great. That's attempted. That's not landed. It could just take one shot. Roberio's chin is something that I'll bet against almost all the time. I think that Roberio is a flawed fighter to begin with, and we're just waiting on certain matchups to capitalize. So yeah, I mean, this is one where I have him in some of my lineups, but I'm also going to avoid it because I just don't know what to expect. And now you bring in the weight miss at the number where Dier is. It's like, I mean, when I made my spreadsheet, he was at minus 280. I don't know what he's at now, but I'm not really all that in love with backing crazy numbers for Dana White Contender Series fighters in their debut against fighters that have true UFC experience. Yeah. I mean, the strength of schedule, if you go through all the records of everybody, Roberio's opponent's win rate sits at 62%. Dier's opponent's win rate sits at 56%. So clearly a better strength of schedule for Roberio, and he has the UFC advantage. This could be one where maybe a horrible weight cut leads to Dier's cardio not being up to par, and also with him being low volume, the guy who gets the takedown wins. But I don't want to bet on Roberio and banking on his wrestling, because I don't think his wrestling's all that great. And he likes to strike as well. So I'll be picking Dier to pull this one off, but I think it's either a low volume finish or a low volume decision. And I'd rather just pass this week. I mean, like, I understand that he could have some crazy upside if the weight miss maybe was strategic or there wasn't anything wrong. But I like a lot of other fighters, and I know there's some fighters that I like that nobody likes, so it's giving me a unique combination to begin with. I'd rather just take somebody who I know what I'm expecting. So Dier is going to win the fight, in my opinion, but tread lightly.
Yeah, I mean, when you see a fighter miss weight by 4.5 pounds, I mean, a lot of the questions kind of go into at that point, just based on being around this fight game for a long time, that to me tells me someone in that camp made a decision. We're stopping the weight cut.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Just like, hey, you're not going to make weight, so let's just get on the scale and just see if we can get this fight to continue. Like that to me is the one. When I put my sheet together, by the way, I had him as a 4-1 betting favorite.
Already? Wow, because I made my sheet. I was ready to go. Jason knows. I've been ready to go. I've been roaring to talk about this fight card for a while. I don't know why, but I did all my data super early in the week, and when I started seeing some of the fighters that I like according to my stats in the algorithm, I'm excited, because either I'm going to be dead wrong and say, okay, I'm going to take this as a learning experience and try to fix it. Where did I go wrong? Or I'm onto something that nobody's on. And I'm totally fine with that for DFS when it comes to projections and ownership.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Hard Rock app, which is here in state of Florida. That's our legal betting app. Dier minus 425.
I mean, that's just the. I mean, what is he?
Plus 275 to win by decision.
What's his flag? Kazakhstan? Yeah, I mean, that's the Kazakhstan hype right there. That's really what that is.
Yeah.
I mean, Dana White's Contender Series plus Kazakhstan. I get it. He's undefeated. He's good. He's talented. Still a lot to learn, though, when it comes to the fight game.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Let's move over to our next matchup. We got Seung Woo Choi taking on Kevin Vallejos. Vallejos a minus 725 betting favorite, plus 450 for Choi, who's 7,100 on DK, $8 on FanDuel. Vallejos 9,100 on DK and $20 on FanDuel, Pete.
And this is where we break the internet right here, Jason. The whole world loves Kevin Vallejos. And listen, I like him a lot too. I like Kevin Vallejos a lot. But can we pump the brakes a little bit? Can we pump the brakes? Mr. Twitter Fingers over there, Kevin Vallejos, has been on social media talking so much. And I almost think like people are starting to get annoyed on Twitter, because He's been saying how this is going to be so easy. What round do you want me to knock out Choy in? He had like 15, 16 pounds left to cut last night. He goes, this is the easiest cut. Man, this job is so easy. And he just keeps going in there, and he's kind of like, I don't know. It just seems to me, and I've been around this game a really, really long time, you better be careful overlooking a UFC vet. That's all I'm saying. Because you're not fighting another Dana White's Contender Series guy. You're not fighting Cam Teague. You're not fighting some random guy that is just looking for an opportunity. You're fighting Seung-Woo Choi. And Seung-Woo Choi, I get it. He's been knocked down a ton in his past 5 fights. I get it. He's been finished by Alex Caceres, Michael Trezano, and Steve Garcia. This is the same guy that does have victories over Jarno Aarons, Julian Erosa, and everybody's favorite fighter, Youssef Zalal. Granted, that is back in 2021. But let me just tell you that this guy, Seung-Woo Choi, is skilled. He may not be durable, but he's skilled. So the one thing you can't necessarily project is how somebody's durability is going to hold up into a fight. But I know skill for skill, Seung-Woo Choi can make this a very interesting fight and a lot different than what we saw against John Silva that Kevin Vallejos had on the Dana White's Contender Series fight. Now, hear me out. Everybody loves Kevin Vallejos. I think he's so damn good, and I think his hands are great. He really reminds me of like a Francisco Prado of just exciting prospect. Everybody gets behind him. But now he's coming off of Dana White's Contender Series fight where he lost to John Silva, but may have been John Silva's hardest fight to date that we know of. Okay. I'll give him that. He still lost. And that was primarily a boxing fight. You know, primarily just 2 pocket boxers going in there, just trading leather. I think Seung-Woo Choi has the skill set to fight a completely different fight that can totally screw up Kevin Vallejos. Now, hear me out, okay? Kevin Vallejos, pretty young. 9 years younger than Seung-Woo Choi. Okay? His strength of schedule to date, his opponent's record, his opponent's win record sits at 56%. Seung-Woo Choi, he's the older guy, has the more UFC experience, has those wins that I talked about. His combination of height plus reach advantage sits at 11.5 inches. Seung-Woo Choi, not only that, going up against a boxer, very heavy on his lead foot, has phenomenal leg kicks, and he brutalized Jarno Aarons' leg in that matchup. Seung-Woo Choi has the skills to beat Kevin Vallejos. But I totally understand why people are worried about the durability of Seung-Woo Choi. And also the fight IQ. Seung-Woo Choi has hurt so many fighters. And I think he's one of these guys where he's like winning almost every fight. And then he makes a boneheaded decision of biting down on the mouthpiece, getting a little too close. And next thing you know, he gets finished. I mean, Seung-Woo Choi has some crazy power. He knocked down Suma Mokhtarian, knocked down Julian Erosa and finished him, knocked down Alex Caceres, but ultimately lost the fight and got submitted. Josh Culibao knocked him down twice. Not really a good look there. Michael Trezano knocked him down twice, but Seung-Woo Choi stung him and hurt him once, had him staggering a second time. He knocked down Jarno Aarons, also got knocked down against Steve Garcia. But in all these fights, he's dangerous. In all these fights, he's having moments. How do you fix that? Because clearly he's making some mental mistakes. And I think the way you fix that is you surround yourself with a UFC legend, which he always has, but I think he's taken it to another level this camp. Is the Korean Zombie has really, really been right by his side. And I think being under the tutelage of the Korean Zombie can make you fix some crazy errors. He's going up against a debuting guy. It's very, very dangerous, Kevin Vallejos. But we got questions in the takedown department as well. I mean, I could sit here and I could say Seung-Woo Choi is going to sit out there and out-kickbox Kevin Vallejos. I'm worried about Seung-Woo Choi getting knocked out. But if Seung-Woo Choi goes in there and he attempts some takedowns, I think we could have some success. I think if he attempts 2 or 3 takedowns in a close round, he could get rewarded that. If he goes 15 minutes, I think that he is a total live dog to win a decision. And also, he can hurt Kevin Vallejos. He's a tall, lean guy. regardless, I think this fight's going to be fireworks. It's going to be an absolute war. And 𝐒𝐭 Choy has these skills to pull off the upset. Does he have the fight IQ? Questionable. Does he have the durability? Extremely questionable. But when I look at Kevin Vallejos, I look at him, he's a guy that lands beautiful, beautiful combinations. But I got so many questions on Kevin Vallejos. And at this number, I mean, I have 𝐒𝐭 Choy at plus 325 when I made this. Kevin Vallejos was minus 450. I mean, I would imagine the odds are even worse now. But plus 325? It's a number play for me. At the number, I'm playing 𝐒𝐭 Choy. No doubt about it. I just got to have him not get knocked out in round one, which I understand could happen. And it could look pretty easy. But I'll take my chances against Dana White Contender Series fighters all day long when they're going up against a tough test. Give me 𝐒𝐭 Choy to pull off the upset.
Choy plus 450 on the betting line. Vallejos right now currently sitting at minus 725. I think from a betting side, if you're going to play this fight, I think you go prop game hunting with Vallejos to win by TKO KO, because that is a clear path to victory for him. Now we get the heavyweight matchup. Waldo Cortez Acosta taking on Ryan Spann. Spann making his move up to heavyweight here. He's plus 150 on the betting line, minus 180 for Acosta, who is 8,300 DK, $16 on FanDuel, and for Ryan Spann, 7,900 DK and $12 on FanDuel, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, interesting fight. Ryan Spann to me doesn't look great on the scales. He just looks like a balloon guy. Waldo Cortez Acosta, the true heavyweight here. I mean, we kind of broke this fight down earlier. Ryan Spann, super live in round one, very, very dangerous. His strikes attempted, he's actually going to be lacking in the strikes attempted per minute. And Ryan Spann's striking defense sits at 43%, which is pretty damn poor. Waldo Cortez Acosta's striking defense sits at 52%. The wrestling upside is there for Ryan Spann to succeed early and wrap up the neck of Waldo Cortez Acosta. And I actually think that's probably his best path to victory. But Cortez Acosta shows that he's a little bit well-rounded as well against Roberio de Spain, who's really just a striker and is over in Karate Combat now. I think that we could see Ryan Spann attempt 3 to 4 takedowns, maybe have success and get a finish, maybe get fatigued and realize, holy moly, these guys are big in the heavyweight division. And, I'm not having as much success as I could. I like Ryan Spann early. I like Cortez Acosta late, but also I like Cortez Acosta to win a decision. I could see this being a very close, competitive fight until the fight starts getting stretched out. I mean, at the number, and initially before I did all the data, I said to myself, I think Ryan Spann's going to be an underdog I'm going to get to. And the more I started doing it, I go, wow, I cannot believe that a guy in Waldo Cortez Acosta that I've never been high on is somebody that I'm going to be picking to beat Ryan Spann. And I am picking Waldo Cortez Acosta to beat Ryan Spann. The defensive skills of Ryan Spann are a little lacking, sitting at 93% in total. The strength of schedule clearly goes to Ryan Spann. But all things considered, I'm going to pick Waldo Cortez Acosta to win the decision. And I'm going to say that it's a sloppy, fatigued, tiring type of one where Spann might have Cortez Acosta on skates early. Cortez Acosta comes back and almost gets him out of there, but this does go 15 minutes. Give me Cortez Acosta as a slight favorite at 8,300.
Yeah, I mean, I like Cortez Acosta in this situation as well. I mean, I think, I'm thinking about playing that over 1.5 rounds, but I feel like I'm going to sweat that out just because of the history with Ryan Spann. I mean, it kind of feels like he's moving up to heavyweight as kind of that last-ditch effort to stay in the UFC. And, you mentioned about how he looked on the scale. I mean, that was, to me, one of the big question marks was he going to come in like, hey, he's a 205er, just didn't want to cut the weight anymore, and he was going to be like 230, maybe 240, but he was going to look good. Now you're taking on a legit heavyweight, and that, to me, is where I kind of concerned with there. But to me, Cortez Acosta is the rightful pick there. Now, we got one of the bigger betting favorites on the card, Sung Young Yu, who is a minus 650 betting favorite, taking on AJ Cunningham, who's plus 425. Yu, 9,500 DK, $23 on FanDuel. Cunningham, 6,700 DK, $8 on FanDuel, making the move down to bantamweight, and he did make weight.
Yeah, he made weight pretty damn surprising. I think that AJ Cunningham is an okay absolute punt play this week. Um, you know, you guys know my absolute punt play will be Sung Woo Choi. I'll be closing my eyes and looking through my hands while the fight's going on. Um, but I think that he's in consideration down here at 6,700 just because of the frame, also because of his training situation of who he's trained with throughout his career and how his ground game is. It's solid. It's definitely not good, but um, I'm a pretty big fan of 𝐤𝐤𝐬𝐬's grappling. I think that his grappling is fantastic. I think that the striking is where he could have a ton of problems because Cunningham could be the more active on the feet. I have you attempting 9 strikes per minute, Cunningham attempting 8. Um, the striking defensive numbers for Cunningham are horrible, and that's mainly because of his brutal fights against 𝗿𝗏𝗵𝗏 and on the Contender series as well. But his striking defense sits at 48%. 𝐤𝐤𝐬𝐬's striking defense sits at 72%. I actually think the threat of the takedown could lead to more striking success than normal for 𝐤𝐤𝐬, going up against a pretty big guy to make 135 pounds. But the way that 𝐤𝐤𝐬 dominates this fight is with his wrestling. I think he's a fantastic wrestler. I think he's a fantastic grappler. His top control, his transitions, and his takedowns, I love it. According to my metrics, he's, going up against an opponent who has a 33% takedown defensive rating. Not good when you're going against a true grappler. But, I mean, this is clearly the most winnable fight for AJ Cunningham's UFC career. I just have 𝐤𝐤𝐬 attempting 8 takedowns throughout this 15-minute contest and scoring about 5 of them. Saying this could be some mat returns. This could be just tons of top control. I think it also could be, en route to a submission finish. But 𝐤𝐤𝐬 is flawed. He's definitely a flawed fighter. When it comes to climbing the rankings, he's going to get exposed. I just don't think AJ Cunningham, despite being a big guy, is that fighter to expose him. I mean, total opponent defensive rating for Cunningham comes in at 81%. Strength of schedule goes with, 𝐤𝐤𝐬's opponent's win rate. It sits at 67%. Cunningham's win rate sits at 53%. It's a long-winded way of me saying, man, this price tag is outrageous for 𝐤𝐤𝐬, and I think everybody's going to avoid it, and I get it. I understand it. I think I'd be much more inclined to play some takedown props for 𝐤𝐤𝐬, maybe a potential submission finish. I like playing these takedown props. I have him scoring 5+ takedowns if AJ Cunningham can survive 15 minutes. But yeah, I mean, I can see a world where Cunningham comes through, but I think that 𝐤𝐤𝐬, if he gets it to the mat, man, I was watching some regional tape of Cunningham, and granted it's some time ago. There's levels, and he's not on the same level of 𝐤𝐤𝐬 on the mat. So give me 𝐤𝐤𝐬 to dominate in the grappling department and win a decision.
Yeah, I mean, Cunningham was one of those guys, just got the move to 135, and he's primarily trained under Bryce Mitchell there in Arkansas, has been training in Las Vegas the past couple weeks to get ready for this one. Was one of those bigger underdogs. I was like, man, maybe I take a chance on him just because I think stylistically this is a much better matchup than some of the other matchups he's had in the UFC. Next up, we got Vera taking on Josias. Josias, a minus 950 betting fair. He did miss weight by half pound, was trying to make that additional weight. Vera plus 550, who's 6,800 on DK, $9 on FanDuel. Josias, 9,400 on DK and $22 on FanDuel, Pete.
Yeah, okay, so, listen, I have to look at this whole card, and I have to come up with how the hell I'm going to come up, develop some lineups. And you have to get different. And in hindsight, embracing getting different when it comes to, lineup building is how you're going to take down some tournaments. You got to roster some people that really nobody wants to roster. You got to roster some people that, you just don't have a ton of confidence in, but do you have a little bit more confidence in them than the market? I mean, I think me saying that Sung Woo Choi could beat Kevin Vallejos is extremely bold. I think there's a much higher percentage of him winning than what the odds suggest. So given all these plays are number plays, and I have to side with value. Vera is not going to be one of those value plays for me this week. I think he has one path to victory, one condition for winning, and that's via submission. I think that Vera being a guy with, leg lock backgrounds, being a part of 50-50 gym with Ryan Hall, technically being the striking coach, a striking coach there. I'm not in love with his striking. I think his striking is pretty poor. I also think that his wrestling's pretty lacking as well. He's a guard puller. So his jiu-jitsu is super, super dangerous. And his leg entanglements and his submission attacks off of his back can catch green opponents sleeping. He does have a green opponent. And 𝐃𝐲𝐬𝐬𝐳 Musasa here. I think that 𝗃𝐲𝐬𝐬𝐳 Musasa on the feet will butcher Vera. I think that he will land combinations at will. I think he could even rock and get him out of there. But how I see this fight going is, Vera goes in there, gets close, clinches with him, pulls guard. We've seen this happen time and time again. And I think it's going to happen. And then Musasa's going to land some ground and pound and finish him. I really can see that happening. Vera pulls guard, gets hit with some shots, and Musasa's one of the first person to knock out Vera. But he has to be very wise and very careful. And hopefully he's been training that. Because if you are green to leg locks, or you do not address those in your camp, or you do not have a strategy of dealing with leg locks and leg entanglements, man, those guys can totally destroy your career by getting a heel hook, putting you in a knee bar. But more importantly, the heel hook is a submission that is super, super dangerous, and one that people panic tap out of. Mm-hmm. And I have in the past when I didn't really know leg locks as much as I know them now. And also, obviously, because you're in excruciating pain, too. But I think that 𝗃𝐲𝐬𝐬𝐳 Musasa just needs to be wise to that, and I think he wins this fight. I mean, Vera has Ultimate Fighter experience. If I'm looking at 𝗃𝐲𝐬𝐬𝐳 Musasa, his strength of schedule actually is a little bit better. His opponent's win rate sits at 65% in the Dana White's Contender Series fight. I think is a lot harder of a matchup than this fight against Vera. Vera's opponent's win rate sits at 59%. If I'm playing Vera, I'm playing him via submission. And if I could specifically target leg locks, I would do so. But, I really think 𝗃𝐲𝐬𝐬𝐳 Musasa wins every minute of this on the feet, has to avoid some tricky positions, and possibly works towards a ground and pound finish. So the number's ridiculous, a part of 𝗃𝐲𝐬𝐬𝐳 Musasa, though. Like, this is what I'm saying when it comes to the Dana White's Contender Series hype. Mm-hmm. Like, that is crazy. Like, when I made this, he's minus 625. Did you say minus 900?
950.
Come on. What the fuck are we doing? That's crazy. That's crazy. So, I mean, like, understand that when I'm picking people with, I take into consideration their methods of victory, their paths to victory, their win conditions, and where the odds are currently at. And I'm not playing the money line, clearly. I think Musasa via decision's interesting. We've already seen that he can go the distance. We've seen Vera go the distance against Rinya Nakamura. Very dangerous, and was able to surprisingly survive that, in my opinion. But yeah, Musasa wins this fight as long as he doesn't get leg locked. But again, tons of questions around a green guy coming in as a Dana White Contender Series hyped up prospect.
Yeah, always kind of concerns you when someone comes off Contender Series, and especially when you're talking about how inflated this line has become. Yeah, when I put my sheet together right here before the show, minus 950 was a line that was there. Next up, we got a female matchup. Luciano taking on Hughes. Luciano is a minus 245 betting favorite, plus 200 for Sam Hughes, who's 7,400 on DK, $12 on FanDuel. Stephanie Luciano is 8,800 on DK and $19 on FanDuel, Pete.
Man, I tell you what, pre-data, I was thinking to myself, Sam Hughes is a dog again. Like, okay, I'm going to get behind it. I mean, she's got crazy UFC experience. I mean, she has one of the best strength of schedules on the entire slate. Her opponent's win rate sits at 69%. She's priced when I made this sheet at plus 210. I'm very, very shocked and surprised that, she's an underdog again. And then I start diving into the fight, and I'm like, all right, well, Luciano's going to have 7 years on her. But the combination of height and reach actually goes to Sam Hughes 3 inches. And I start looking at the fight. I'm like, okay, well, when I like Sam Hughes, I like her when she's going up against a mediocre striker who wants to grapple, because Sam Hughes can sprawl and brawl her way to some victories, or maybe she's the better grappler of the two, and she can take the fight to the mat as she did to Elise Reed. The strikes attempted is pretty similar, but I have Luciano, a part of those two fights, attempting 11 strikes per minute. Her opponent, Sam Hughes' striking defense sits at 56%. Luciano, granted, it's only 2 fights, and granted, she was going against Talita Alencar, who's not a striker at all, but her striking defense sits at 68%. I'm pretty impressed with the work rate of both of these ladies, if I'm being honest. And I know that Sam Hughes is an absolute conditioning dog. So I love the fact that she puts in so much work so that she can push a crazy pace and break a lot of people that are just, not willing to go that extra mile. If anybody grapples in this bout, it's clearly Sam Hughes. I have her attempting almost 3 takedowns and landing almost 1. So I would probably say she's going to land 1 takedown here. But what Luciano has shown is that she can get back to her feet, and she can also fight back and work her way back and not going to give up on herself. Sam Hughes' total defense sits at 116%. Luciano, between those fights with Alencar, sits at 153. I mean, it's not going to feel good, and I want to get behind Sam Hughes as an underdog. I think the price tag of Sam Hughes is the appealing part. $7,400, pretty cheap. And I think because it's women's MMA, it always tends to be a little closer. And we see underdogs cash at quite a high clip. I think value-wise, I'm not in love with the $8,800 price tag of Luciano. If I had to play one side, I'd probably lean towards playing the underdog. I have this as a competitive fight, but one where Luciano's striking her on the outside. She's the more efficient. She's the more dangerous striker. She's the one that kind of gets the more the efficiency metrics and wins these rounds, even though they're close. So she's going to sprawl and brawl her way to a victory here. Sam Hughes, I don't think will attempt a crazy amount of takedowns, but I think that Luciano will edge her out over 15 minutes en route to a decision victory. So give me Luciano here. Not in love with it for DFS, though.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw the plus money on Sam Hughes, it was one that I did find a little bit intriguing just because we've seen her come through these spots. So, but yeah, it's Luciano's probably going to be picked. But from a daily fantasy aspect, really don't like the price tag there of $8,800. Next up, we got Barz and Lima. Lima minus 450 betting fair, plus 325 for Daniel Barz, who's $7,200 DK, $11 on FanDuel. Andre Lima, $9,000 on DK and $19 on FanDuel. Pete.
Yeah, let me tell you, man, Barz is a guy that I've always been pretty damn impressed with. And I think that was mainly because of his Dana White's Contender Series fight some years ago. And I almost think that I've overrated Daniel Barz since that moment because, when he had that scrap with Carlos Hernandez, I knew who Carlos Hernandez was, and it was a split decision. And the way that he went to the wrestling well, I was very impressed. I mean, he attempted 16 takedowns in that bout, and he landed 5 of them. It was a hell of a fight, but to land 5 takedowns and only have 2 minutes of control time is horrendous. What the hell? That's horrible. Ends up knocking down Jafel Filho with a body shot, and then Filho works his way back into the fight and submits him in round 1. Okay, a little untrustworthy there, and a little odd that he got finished after hurting him. Against Victor Altamirano, he knocks down Victor Altamirano, edges him out over 15 minutes. It's like, okay, I think that Barz is good, but definitely not what I originally thought. And now he's going up against Andre Lima, a guy that I think is due for a breakout performance. I mean, on the Contender Series, he had a pretty dominant performance over Rickson Zenidim. Against Igor Severino, was getting taken down like crazy. Severino had 5 takedowns in that bout, and it wasn't even done. Was just getting ragdolled, working back to his feet. Has a split decision over Mitch Raposo. Took Felipe dos Santos down twice, attempted 2 submissions. So I do like the fact that he attempted 2 submissions in that fight, also attempted 2 submissions in the Igor Severino fight. But, man, only landed 18 significant strikes. So this guy Lima is just shitty activity. So I did all the research, and, I have him at 5.5 strikes attempted per minute. Both Barz sits at 7.88 strikes attempted per minute. Both fighters sitting at 57% striking defense. Pretty poor striking metrics. I do have Barz attempting a decent amount of takedowns in this fight against Andre Lima, but I think Lima will be defending him decently well. Takedown defense sitting at 73%. And then when I go and I take the strength of schedule difference is what really intrigued me, and I didn't realize this at all. Andre Lima's strength of schedule in MMA, his opponent's win rate sits at 71%, whereas Daniel Barz's opponent sits at 54%. That's a pretty significant difference compared to other fights on the card. It actually has the highest difference apart of strength of schedule on anybody on this card. So, I mean, I think that Andre Lima needs to really up the volume. I'm actually going to say that Lima's a pretty good pick this week. I like him here. The odds aren't too crazy on him. When I made it, it was minus 310. Barz was at plus 245. Obviously, the output and the volume's always a question mark for Lima. But Lima, I at least know what I'm getting. I know he's a skilled striker. I know he's crisp on the feet. I know he's a very good fighter. Dier, who's facing Roberio, is a guy that could have more upside, and probably that's a no-brainer, has more upside than Lima. But I just don't know what I'm getting. I at least know I'm getting Lima, and Lima's very, very talented. So I like Lima here over Barz, and I'm probably going to play him a little bit more than I should. He kind of has like Chris Gutierrez vibes about him, about like how poor of a DFS performer he is. But I like Lima here to come through.
Yeah, and as you mentioned earlier, so also could be one foul away from getting DQ'd.
Yeah, I know. So, yes, I'm sorry I didn't even mention that, but the guy cheats so much. I mean, like he's one of the worst cheaters of all time that I've ever seen in the UFC in the Contender series. I mean, this guy grabs shorts, he grabs the cage, he pokes the eyes, he kicks you in the balls. He fouls you so much that he makes his opponent want to bite him. That's what he does to him. So, Lima just does it all to win. So, I mean, It sounds silly, but like Lima's strength of schedule, everything I like, plus he's going to cheat for a win factor. As long as he doesn't receive a point deduction, I think we're in the clear here. I mean, I'll probably bet the point deduction props out there if there are some. And then I also maybe bet a draw, just small money, just because of a point deduction resulting in a draw. But yeah, if none of that happens, this guy just shows me he's so competitive that he hates losing. So give me Andre Lima here to significantly win.
Next up, we got a female matchup. We got Nunes taking on 𝐾𝐤𝐻. 𝐾𝐤𝐻 is a plus 150 betting underdog, minus 180 for Nunes, who's 8,500 DK, $15 on FanDuel. For 𝐾𝐤𝐻, she is 7,700 DK and $13 on FanDuel, Pete.
Holy moly, what a fight. And if you guys are tuning into the show, really, really appreciate it. Jason and I appreciate this. We put in a lot of work. We're trying to build this channel, get us to 2,000 subscribers. It's super, super helpful. Tell your friends about it. Hit that like button as well. Get us over 100 likes. And really, really, really do us a favor and comment something. Comment your favorite play down below in the comment section. Maybe we'll have to start doing a giveaway or something. We'll figure something out, but we really would love the engagement. It'll help boost the algorithm. Yeah, this fight, it might be one of the best fights on the card, truthfully. When I saw the initial lines, I saw 𝐾𝐤𝐻 as an underdog. I saw Sam Hughes as an underdog. Women's MMA underdogs, you already know. I like getting to them. And I go, man, Nunes is not really anything special in my opinion. Has a big left hand, but outside of that, not really a fighter that I like. Wow, Jose Nunes is so nasty. And in this matchup, it's like a tailor-made striker's delight where 𝐾𝐤𝐻 can just stand and bang, and she ain't gonna get taken down and ragdolled because her wrestling and grappling is atrocious. but she actually might have better wrestling and grappling than Jose and Nunes here. The way I have the metrics, I have Jose and Nunes attempting almost 13 strikes per minute, whereas Catchaware will be attempting 8. So I have Catchaware's striking defense sitting at 43%. Nunes' striking defense sitting at 51%. So the striking output and the efficiency clearly goes to Nunes, who also packs a punch with her left hand. Catchaware has a beautiful right uppercut and a dangerous right hand herself. In the takedown department, I mean, I would like to think the better grappler is Priscilla Catchaware. She probably will attempt one takedown in this bout. Will she get it? Not really entirely sure. The strength of schedule is in favor of Priscilla Catchaware, just slightly at 60% of her opponent's win rate, whereas Nunes' opponent's win rate sits at 59%. I mean, at minus 205, I'm not playing Nunes. I'll tell you that. Like, I'm just not. I think she's a flawed fighter. I think she has a good left hand. She's beatable. The good thing is she may be the more physically imposing fighter in this matchup. And she looked to be in excellent conditioning. But, I mean, a numbers play, I'm expecting, and how I have this fight going is it's going to be a competitive fight over 15 minutes. Why am I playing minus 205? I think it could be really close and honestly like a split decision. So at the number, I would say if I had to play something, maybe I'd play a Catchaware side. But ultimately, I think this is going to go 15 minutes. I do have Nunes winning the bout, but winning the bout and winning the bet are two different things. Like, you're laying minus 200 on a super close competitive fight. I expect her to win, but I'm not entirely sold on Jose and Nunes to begin with. So at 8,500, probably a pass for me. I don't think she's finishing Priscilla Catchaware. At 7,700, much rather play Catchaware in a competitive fight. But yeah, I still have Jose and Nunes winning this bout.
Yeah, I'm on the Catchaware side on this one just because, stylistically, I just think this is the proper matchup for her. When you think about who she struggles with in the UFC and who she's not struggling with against, when I think about taking some chances, Catchaware is one of those. Then we got a female matchup, 𝐼𝐠, who's a 4-1 betting favorite, taking on Dubin, who's 6,900 DK, $9 on FanDuel, a plus 300 betting underdog. 𝐿𝐶 over on DraftKings, she's 9,300 and $19 on FanDuel, Pete.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk about this fight. And the reason why is because I think we got one fighter in Dubin who probably will have a ton of people wanting to play her because of the knockout that she put forth on Dana White's Contender Series. Yennecy Dubin came in as a massive underdog. I'm pulling it up as we speak. She came in as a plus 450 underdog and knocked out Shannon Clark in round 1 at 1 minute and 13 seconds. And man, it just came out of nowhere. It was such a brutal knockout. If you dive back into her record might be the worst record I've ever seen. She has the worst strength of schedule I've ever seen. Okay, let's dive in. So we're going to ignore the first bout because it was a no contest. But guess what? Her opponent was a debuting fighter. Debuting fighter, second fight. First actual win. Debuting fighter, second fight. Debuting fighter, third fight. Debuting fighter, fourth fight. Debuting fighter, fifth fight. It wasn't until Dana White's Contender Series where she actually fought somebody with a win. And yes, she beat Shannon Clark, who's 5-0. But to that point, none of her opponents had won a fight or had a fight. Never mind won a fight, had a fight. And a lot of these fighters never fought again. I mean, the strength of schedule is horrible. Absolutely horrible. Her opponent's win rate currently sits at 33%. And think about it. Shannon Clark is 5 of those wins. Because Shannon Clark's record now sits at 6-1. So her strength of schedule is one of the worst of all time. And 𝐼𝐠, I totally get it. People don't want to play a 3-2 fighter sitting at, when I made the sheet, minus 500 because they just see 6-0. 6-0 is a plus 380. 3-2 is a minus 500. Make that make sense. I get it. go back and watch some 𝗏𝐬𝐬𝐳 film. She's good, man. I mean, she's 4-0 as an amateur, and she's currently 3-2 as a pro. You go and you look what the crazy split decision fight she had against Ernesto 𝗃𝐲𝐻𝐻. Crazy fight. Absolutely nuts. Then she debuts short notice against Gabriela Fernandez, and it goes a split decision as well. And the volume this girl landed was ridiculous. She's very, very talented. She's very good. She's 2 years younger. The combination of height and reach advantage sits at 5.5 inches. The output, strikes attempted for 𝗏𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐳 sits at almost 21. The work rate's ridiculous. The takedowns attempted sits at 4. You know, all the metrics favor her. I mean, her opponent had one fight on the Contender Series, and her opponent's striking defense sits at 41%. In combination with everything, in combination with the fight film, I think 𝗏𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐳 destroys Dubin this week. I truthfully do. She's one of my favorite options out there, and I understand people are going to say and hate on me for it and say, how are you playing a 9,300 women's MMA fighter? Homegirl scored 82.9 against Gabriela Fernandez at 7,200. What do you guys mean? I think this is the easiest matchup of 𝗏𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐳's career. She's going to go in there and do whatever the hell she wants. Avoid a big shot, of course. She could get knocked out. Women's MMA knockouts don't happen all that often. I mean, 𝐤𝐤𝐳's strength of schedule as a professional isn't anything crazy. Her strength of schedule sits at 45% opponent's win rate. But all the other metrics and everything, just it looks good. She looks good. I think she's going to go out there, put a pace on Dubin. We don't know if Dubin can go long. We don't know if Dubin can go 15 minutes. We don't know much about Dubin's grappling. I watched some regional footage of Dubin, and her takedown defense looks terrible. I think that 𝐤𝐤𝐳 can go in there and do whatever the hell she wants. And I think this is going to be a statement win for 𝐤𝐤𝐳. 𝗏𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐳, 9,300. Sign me up. My favorite 9,000 option this week.
And if you do have any questions, be sure to line those up in the chat right now or in our Discord channel. We'll get to those questions right after we get into our straight-up fight picks. Main event, give me underdog number 1, Roman Dolidze.
I'm going Marvin Vettori, my man.
I'll go underdog number 2, 𝐒𝐢𝐬𝐬𝐻𝐿.
𝐒𝐢𝐬𝐻𝐿, baby.
Alexander Hernandez.
Alexander Hernandez.
Damon Blackshear.
Damon Blackshear.
I'll go Dier, even though the weight does concern me.
Yeah, Dier for me as well. Super concerning, though.
Vallejos.
Nope. I'm going Sungwoo Choi. I'm sticking to my guns, but I totally get it.
Cortez Acosta.
Cortez Acosta.
We'll go Yu.
Soo-Young Yu.
Josias.
Josias Musasa.
Luciano. Lima.
Andre Lima.
Catchaware.
I'm going to go Nunes.
And I'll go 𝐤𝐤𝐳.
𝐤𝐤𝐳, baby.
Samuel, appreciate the super chat there. He says, so starting Vallejos and Dier in your lineups, almost a lock play. When you're looking at punt plays, what is the kind of metrics for upside to look at? Thanks a ton, boys, for the content.
Sam, thanks so much, man. Always consistently supporting us. We really appreciate it. Truly appreciate it. Everybody, we appreciate you guys out there. Sam, though, got to tell you, man, really, really appreciate it each and every week. Very generous of you. Yeah, I could see why. I think it's going to be like a chalky build, Vallejos and Dier. I really do, and I totally get it. And that's people betting against their opponent's durability, right? Sungwoo Choi has been knocked down like 4 or 5 times in his past couple fights. So I get it. And trust me, I understand that me doing a bold call, it's bold for a reason. So I think Vallejos is going to carry massive ownership. And if he doesn't find the finish, that's the one thing that I would be worried about, because there are some things that are just completely untested about his game. But yes, Sungwoo Choi's durability on the card, technically one of the worst on the card. Next up is Brenton Abero. So I mean, I totally understand that. Bet against guys that have a deteriorating chin. So I think that's a popular build, and it may work out, but it may only work out like 60% of the time. I'll take my chances 40% of the time.
And Sam goes on to say, I have a feeling being overweight on the women's fighters is a huge leverage this week, in my honest opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I like Giudice. I think everybody's going to see that price tag and not want to get to her. Sometimes the best thing you can have is women's MMA high volume. I mean, like, you know, just go out there. I remember Joanne Calderwood just as an underdog so many times. It doesn't seem like she's going to score that much. And then all of a sudden the fight's over. You're like, how the hell she scored 90 points? How did she score 80-something? You know, and Giudice's work rate is ridiculous. So I think that I could be wrong. But I think that Giudice is going to smash this week.
Get a question here from Discord. Value plays in our 8K and a core 3 on DraftKings. I think when you talk about core 3, I think it's got to start with the main event. Either fighter.
Agreed.
You know, then when I think as I look at is, I mean, I know you like Choy, but I think Vallejos will likely get a finish in the first or second round. So to me, he would be a core play. And the third one for me, the problem is it's, you look at some of these 9,000 options and you feel more confident about going with them. Maybe go with someone like an Alexander Hernandez because maybe his ownership's just not going to be there.
Yep. All right, so look, this is what I got. My 3 favorite value plays. I love Marvin Vettori 1. I love Alexander Hernandez. No. Carly Giudice 2. I like Alexander Hernandez as a mid-range option that I think a lot of people are not going to be clicking. And then, you know, let me pose a question to you because I know you're not on the Seung-Woo Choi this week as I am. Would you rather have Seung-Woo Choi or would you rather have Cody Gibson?
Ooh. Maybe Gibson.
Okay. I think that's what a lot of people will say too. And I don't hate it. I mean, currently in my value rankings, like I got Choi with a value ranking of 20, and I have Gibson with a value ranking of 17.96. So I think they're really close, and clearly, like Gibson's likelihood of going 15 minutes is a lot higher than Seung-Woo Choi's.
I would agree with that one. I would totally agree with that one. Of course, we're here every week before a UFC event. Of course, next week is a fight night card. I don't think it's in the Apex.
No?
Is it? Is that London? Is that the London card?
Don't ask me, bro. You know I don't know.
Hey, I know the next. I'm pretty sure the next 2 events are actually in front of fans. Next week is the London card headlined by Leon Edwards and Sean Brady. And then the following week is the Fight Night card from Mexico City headlined by Brandon Moreno and Steve 𝗍𝗏.
Okay. Finishes. Sam didn't say as usual. Finishes. How many? I'm going to set the line. How many fights we got? 13? I'm going to set the line at 8.5.
Under.
7.5. 8.5 is too generous. That was the easy line. That's
7.5. I might still say under.
I think we got a decent. Huh? Under,
I might still say under.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, Sam comes in 5.5 is his number. I will say over 5.5.
Damn, dude. Either I'm way off. Somebody's way off.
Yeah.
Maybe 6 is the number. You know?
Yeah. Mention a couple of questions that came in here over on the YouTube channel. First off from Joey says, I think Cunningham has a shot. Road to UFC fighters sometimes look better than they are due to lower competition. Yeah, Road to UFC is a little bit of a lower competition there. Matt saying, how is Romanov doing PFL? I had no idea until I got the press release that he was actually in the PFL. He's taking on.
I didn't know he got cut.
He's taking on Tim Johnson in the opening round. That could be
Winnable.
a really sloppy heavyweight fight.
Yeah.
That could be really,
Absolutely.
really sloppy. Yeah, I was actually me and Daniel on my other podcast. We went through the brackets. I think there are some tournaments that are clearly better than the others. I also think there's some brackets that are set for one fighter.
Of course. They've been doing this shit forever. We know.
I thought, maybe I'm wrong, I thought they had come out and said they were seeding these tournaments 1 through 8. There was no mention of seedings when they announced these brackets.
No, they know better.
Yeah, there is some that are definitely set up there. But as always, what's that?
We got Edwards versus Brady next week.
Yeah, remember that was supposed to be Edwards versus Jack Della Maddalena. But Maddalena got moved to the title fight.
Oh my God, this card.
It's a UK Fight Night card.
It's okay, but it's hard because it's like a lot of unknowns.
Yeah, it's it's the show will go on. I know Molly McCann just got a late. She stepped up on short notice to take on a fight next week as well. Obviously, she'll put some butts there in the seat. So that's going to do it for this episode of Fight HQ. Of course, we appreciate everyone who tunes in each and every week. Be here next week to get you ready for UFC London. Of course, be sure to hit that thumbs up button and leave a comment below on anything we said here on the show. So that's going to do it for this episode of Fight HQ. We'll talk to you next week.